The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mies. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes. Much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmees.com/Andrew. That's GETMEEZ.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Hooni Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins.
And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs.
You know, I think that that's all we could hope to do is take our previous experiences, build on them, march them down the road, make them our own, add to the dialogue, to the canon.
That is the voice of Wylie Dufresne of Stretch Pizza in New York City. Wylie is our guest today on Andrew Talks to Chefs. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman, and our guest today is the wonderful Wylie Dufresne, someone who I'm sure probably needs no introduction to most of you out there. Wylie is, of course, currently the chef behind Stretch Pizza in New York City. I will do a proper introduction of Wylie in just a moment. Before I do, just a couple of quick notes here. And I should say, if things look a little funny, it's because I am traveling at the moment. I had an opportunity to sneak away to California and escape the frigid Arctic cold of New York. So I took advantage of that. I'm at a friend's place in Santa Monica, actually, for the weekend. And I am recording this via a Zoom screen. It seems to be going okay. I'm trying to replicate our usual setup. You know, we bought this very nice tarp that sat behind me in our first two video episodes, but it requires me to be home and it requires my crew to be in my apartment with me. So this isn't too bad, I think. Those of you who are only listening, I'm sure, are ready for me to move on to other things. But those of you who are watching, not too bad. Not too bad. I think we'll go with that. Anyway, before I properly introduce Wylie, I do want to say a couple of things. One is I need to just quickly, and longtime listeners know this is a little bit of a quirk of mine, but I tend not to book guests on the show around certain months. For example, Black History Month, which we are in the middle of. It's not that I'm not interested in Black history or the history or culture of other populations, but I don't ever want a guest to think that I only booked them because they happen to fit a certain demographic that happens to be assigned a place on the calendar. I never would want a guest to think that we were engaging in tokenism or anything along those lines. And I mention this because our second video show featured Mavis J. Sanders, and it happened to air at the very beginning of February. That was not by design. In fact, in the episode interview, I actually say this is going to drop in January because that was the original plan. It happened to get pushed into February. And I just want Mavis J. and all of you out there to know that I only aired the show at that time because I didn't have any other show that I could air because we just started shooting in video. So it was a bit unavoidable. And I'd also recorded the intro weeks earlier in front of that big, beautiful tarp that I mentioned. So I did just want to make it clear. I had wanted to have Mavis J on the show forever. That interview was recorded back in December. The original intent was to air it in January. And Mavis J is welcome here 12 months a year. And I just want to make sure that is clear to everybody involved. And this is probably something that seems like a quirk on my part or not even worth mentioning, but I do think it's important. I also, now that we are settled into our rhythm with these video shows, I want to mention some dining experiences that I've had recently. This is something that we had done on the regular. Again, in our haste to finally get out of the gate with the video shows, we kind of stopped doing that. But I'm going to start doing that again, especially since I'm away recently in California. I actually was also here 2 weeks ago, very quietly and very quickly. So I have gotten a chance to eat around the Los Angeles area. One place that I really want to spotlight is my friend Dave Baran's restaurant, Celine. And Celine is in Santa Monica. Many of you may know Dave from his restaurant Pajoli and from a restaurant that he had before that I did not make it to before he sadly closed it, and that was Dialogue. But Celine is a restaurant that Dave bills as kind of a mingling of the seasonal and the surreal. The food is incredibly thoughtful. It is very accomplished, as you might expect if you don't know Dave's background. Well, first of all, you could go back and listen to it in the back catalog of audio only shows of this podcast. But Dave was the chef de cuisine of restaurants like Alinea and Next in Chicago. Super talented, super thoughtful, out of the kitchen, not really relevant to the food, but also just a really good stand-up guy who I like a whole lot. Anyway, I went to Celine. The room is absolutely beautiful. The lighting is incredible. The kitchen is in full display. It's not even separated by a glass wall or anything. That said, the kitchen is very quiet, and the dining room just feels amazing. You go there, it is one of these restaurants. You probably don't want to go there for a business dinner. It's a place to have dinner, to talk about what you're eating, to think about what you're eating. And I just loved my dinner there. I do need to say, in full disclosure, I am a little bit old fashioned this way, that I was Dave's guest. I didn't know I was going to be until the end of the dinner. But as I always promise here, if somebody shows me that kind of generosity, I do not let it affect my comments about the restaurant. I genuinely love the restaurant. If I was with a prominent guide or if I were a newspaper critic, I would be assigning it many, many stars. I think what he's doing there is pretty special. And it's not an inexpensive restaurant, but if you have the means, if you are in the Los Angeles area or if you're visiting the Los Angeles area, Celine is the restaurant. And I would really encourage you. I'm showing some pictures, at least if all goes right when I try to cut this intro together and send it to the new production team, I will have inserted some photographs, and you have been seeing, hopefully in the last few seconds, the beautiful presentation of the food at this restaurant. Celine, again, and Santa Monica. I also went just a few hours before I'm recording this intro for the very first time. I went to Crudo and Nudo in Santa Monica as well. I had a wonderful dinner. The chef of the restaurant, who I liked quite a bit, we spent some time talking today. Brian Bornerman is the chef. Really good raw fish and shellfish dishes and some cooked ones. Much of it was just explosive flavor, beautifully presented. While I was in town, I also visited one of the hotter restaurants in Los Angeles at the moment. It is Herman's, Hermon''S. It is right on the border between Highland Park and South Pasadena. And I got to tell you, this is, for my money, kind of a near perfect restaurant. The design and the room, I overuse this phrase sometimes, but the feng shui of the place is just off the charts. It's pretty perfect. Every design decision, from the room itself to the lighting to the artwork to the serveware to the glassware, it's all very well selected. It all feels very much of a piece. The food is fun, delicious. I'm on a little bit of a sober, curious phase, so I wasn't drinking myself, but the two friends I was with Their cocktails look just great. And I really recommend that restaurant very highly. As far as our home at Gage and Tollner, I do want to say that with this episode, with this interview with Wylie Dufresne, we have migrated from the private dining room that we were in to the restaurant right next to it, which is the Edna Lewis room. And for those of you who don't know, Edna Lewis was a very important chef in the second half of the 20th century in the United States, came to some prominence in New York City, starting in the 1950s, which, given that she was a Black woman at that time, was pretty amazing. Nothing short of miraculous, in my opinion. She, of course, did a lot of writing about Southern food that was very important. And on top of all of that, for a couple of years in the 1980s, was the chef at Gage and Tollner, which is why they had a Edna Lewis room. I had always wanted to be in the Edna Lewis room since I first started talking to the Gage and Tollner folks, and I thought I was in there. I have to be honest. And then when we were filming our first or second episode on video, I kind of noticed, as I should have from the start, for a writer, I can be very non-observant, but I noticed there was all this nautical artwork in the room, which had nothing to do with Edna Lewis. And I said to Zoe and Ben, who are two of the three owners, I said, "We're not in the Edna Lewis room, are we?" And they said, "No, we're not. That's the Edna Lewis room." So we're now in the Edna Lewis room. I'm happy to be there. I just wanted to be there so that I can mention Edna Lewis's name with some frequency here on the show. I think it's a name more people should know. And I'm glad to be in a room that honors her. And that, I think, is all I have to say in the way of notes. So I will properly introduce Wylie in just a moment.
A quick note of thanks to one of our promotional partners, S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
So, as I say, our guest today is Wylie Dufresne. And as I also said at the top of the show, Wylie is someone who probably does not need much of an introduction for the audience of this show. He is one of the more important chefs, I would say, of the last 40 years or so. First came to prominence, of course, at 71 Clinton Fresh Foods. Then kind of went into another level entirely, both in terms of cuisine and in terms of renown at WD-50, a super important restaurant in Lower Manhattan. Wylie was also the chef of Alder Restaurant, which was a restaurant I quite enjoyed. I never thought it quite got its due. And then after those restaurants had run their course, he was the force behind Du's Donuts, which was a really fun project concept that unfortunately went the way of the pandemic, as many restaurants did not make it out of that time. And since the pandemic, Wylie has been the chef and force behind Stretch Pizza. This grew out of some experimenting he did during the pandemic in pizza making, became kind of his thing. And when it was time to get back to work as the pandemic started to wane, Wylie decided to go all in. There is the original Stretch is on Lower Park Avenue. There is also one in Domino Park, in Brooklyn, and there is a third location in New York City as well. I do link to the Stretch Pizza website in the episode notes for today's show, so you can go check that out and find the spot that is most convenient to you. But Wylie is somebody who I have always enjoyed talking to. He is obviously, it comes across instantly, highly intelligent. He's extremely thoughtful. He's obviously very talented. And I don't even know if he would like this word, but I won't say creative. He's very inventive and very clever. And his food is also delicious. It's not just for effect. Everything he does is also kind of centered on flavor. And that certainly is true also at Stretch. I've been there a number of times, both in Manhattan and this summer to Domino Park. And I really like what he and his team are doing there. And, we've had Wylie on the show before. I interviewed him at length for my old blog that is in the archives on the Andrew Talks to Chefs website. So this was really a conversation that I scheduled just to talk shop, talk about some things that were on my mind that I thought it would be good to hear Wylie opine on. And also, of course, to talk about stretch, to talk about pizza making, and to talk about some other topics that I just thought he would be a good person to weigh in on. He did not disappoint. This interview, I think, is terrific. I know that Rod, our producer, and Victor, who's our cinematographer and is doing the editing and mixing of the show, are in love with this interview, as am I. So I'm going to get to it in just a moment after this message from Mies.
Hey everybody, Andrew here. I want to encourage you to check out our presenting sponsor, Mies. Not because they're our sponsor, but because Mies exists to make your kitchen life easier. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system for culinary professionals. What that means is that Mies is a virtual place to house all of your recipes, and just as importantly, it enables you to derive all kinds of information from them: food costs, allergen data, yield loss, unit conversions, and nutritional breakdowns, and also to scale them up or down, and even to cost them, and to do most of that at the press of a virtual button. Mies is also a teaching tool that empowers you to incorporate how-to photos and videos to illustrate individual recipe steps and techniques, which is especially useful and time-saving for multi-unit organizations. The basic version of Mies is free for the entire culinary industry. Upgrade to premium and let Mies make your entire business more efficient and centralized. Train and onboard team members, manage production, and even process invoices. Seriously, if you work with recipes in the pro kitchen or bar, Mies was built for you and will make your entire restaurant's or company's kitchen life easier. And as a listener of Andrew Talks to Chefs, receive 25 free recipe uploads and breakdowns on your new Mies account by signing up today. Learn more at GetMeez, that's GetMeez.com/Andrew. Simply click through via the link on the episode description for today's show.
Okay. And with that, here is my conversation with Wylie Dufresne. Here you go. Hey, Wylie.
Hello, Andrew.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This will air in a few weeks, so I just want to publicly make it an extra big thank you for being here, because we are here less than 48 hours out from the big storm that we had the second weekend of January.
True.
And it took some doing for you to get here.
More than I would have liked,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Yeah.
Obviously well worth it.
Yeah.
And excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is your first time in person on the show. We did a relatively short convo during COVID.
Yes.
Remotely.
Yes.
But the first thing I want to mention, just because I have to mention it, and I'll say going in, I know we can't talk about it at length, but I did just see an Instagram post about it's America's Culinary Cup, yeah?
Correct.
And you are going to be a part of this show.
Correct.
And Michael Thelian, who has Providence in Los Angeles, which is an amazing restaurant, you posted from there several weeks ago, I think right before I saw you around the holidays, that it was like one of the great meals.
Indeed, it was. It's a great restaurant. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And it was fun to go.
Yeah. So anyway, you guys.
I was actually there because I was cooking pizza at Birdie G's.
Oh, it had nothing to do with this.
No, I was at Birdie G's. You know, Jeremy Fox
Yes,
doing
just
his
closed it.
his 8 nights, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the nights. So while in LA, I wanted to go see my pal.
Got
Michael.
it.
Yeah.
Well, all I'm going to say is, so he's also part of the show.
Yes.
So then when I saw the post with the two of you, I thought, aha, not that you need a reason to go to Providence, but I know, so Wylie told me before we shot, we can't get into any details. I just want to say, I think it's so great that two guys of your guys' caliber are going to be involved in this thing because, I don't think of either of you guys as like heat-seeking missiles for the spotlight or fame. Not that you wouldn't take it when it comes along, but you guys seem like your primary motivation is and always has been the food and the restaurants.
Yeah.
So I'm just psyched that however. Someday I'll get the story, but however it happened that you two guys found your way, it reminds me of years ago, Colicchio famously didn't even want to send an audition tape when he got asked to be considered for Top Chef.
Correct.
And then somehow he's now on like a 20+ year run. But someday we'll get that story. Anyway, congratulations. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. It's an exciting thing, and we're excited to embark on this journey. We'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, I'm psyched. Okay, I'd love to talk to you about something. We just did an interview recently for an article. The article was about mentorship.
Yes.
This is a subject that, to me, is endlessly fascinating about your profession. I think the culinary arts, and let's say, as I mean that in a professional sense, I feel like there's such a romance around this notion of mentorship that has, so many things have gone online, have become virtual. There's people who don't even go to their workplace anymore, right? And I always say it, things change. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but I feel like by virtue of the nature of what you do and that so many people come to it in so many different ways, I personally feel a tremendous romance around the notion of mentorship, that this is still a profession where somebody, for whatever reason, sees something in a young person, decides they're going to take them under their wing, and often that's a relationship that goes on for life. And I'd just love to know, do I overstate that, or do you perceive it in a similar way?
No, I don't think you overstate it. I mean, like, to your point, we're not, I don't see us working from home anytime soon. We don't have that, if it can be called a luxury, because I think for those of us that have to go to the office, we see it as a luxury in some ways to be able to, opt out a couple of days. But that being said, we like going to work. We're not looking for, a remote day. And but when we're there, yes, I think that it's very normal, natural part of perhaps how it evolved out of a guild system, maybe. That there becomes this relationship between you and the people that are working for you, with you. I mean, case in point, yesterday I was walking down the street. I live right down around the corner from ABCV, ABC Cucina, ABC Kitchen. And
for people who don't live here, that's in the Flatiron district.
And they're all restaurants owned and operated by Jean-Georges von Gersten, who I worked for, at this point, 30 years ago. And I was walking in front of ABCV as he pulled up in his car.
Oh, nice.
And he was, kind of stuck at a snowbank. He pulled his car up, got out, and I was like, "Chef, hey." He's like, "Please help me get to the curb." I was like, my immediate reaction is, "Hold on, let me carry you on my shoulder." Because it's that kind of, I look up to him with that much respect. And it was a serendipitous moment that I wasn't expecting, but here we are 30+ years, friends, and at times partners, and someone that I consider my primary mentor, and so someone that am always excited to run into, whether planned or unplanned. And there's an immediate, the gaps are gone, and there we are, we're back again. We're using funny terms that he and I, shared a long time ago, and so there is this. You slide right back into it, and yes, that's exactly part of it, in the best possible way.
Yeah, I mean, my next question was going to be, when you say we slip right back into it, I mean, I've been very lucky as a writer. I've had some mentors in my life. I think a lot of writers don't have that opportunity, but there is an element of it where I never quite feel, it's not imposter syndrome, but I never quite feel like I've attained, like I belong, I'm quite in their realm. You know, like I don't want to name drop, but there's some legendary writers who I've gotten to know pretty well, but they're the people I came up like reading, idolizing. I always feel the kid when I'm with them. Do you ever get to a point where you're like, yeah, we're just colleagues now?
I mean, colleagues, I don't know, that's tough, even though we are technically colleagues, and I will always, he is always chef to me.
Yes, of course.
But there's a joy, there's a happiness, there's a warmth inside that I feel when I see him. There's an immediate, I don't have any, I loved every minute of working for him. And, we've talked about this in the past. And so for me, seeing him is, it immediately puts me in a happy place. So whether I certainly never see myself as his equal,
sure,
but I don't have the nervous energy I had the first, several years of our relationship. Now it's just wonderful, It's like, and a couple weeks ago, Alfred, I'm down in the basement and someone says, there's a gentleman named Alfred at the bar. And I'm like, there's only one Alfred in my life. You know what I mean? It's Alfred Portale,
yes.
Gotham Bar and Grill, now Portale. And, he happened to be walking by and at a weird time in the restaurant. So he was the only person sitting at the bar, and he ordered a pizza to go. And because I was there, we talked. And it's like we slip back into these very familiar places, shared camaraderie. I think you go through something with these people at such a high, intense level. And if you're lucky and fortunate enough to do it for extended periods of time, then you just develop, I think, these bonds that are hard to break.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that way about other people that have worked for me that I run into or talk to, or I send a text to, or, slip back into it is sort of the best way I can say. Like, it's just, these are people you care deeply about and you love talking about everything with, not just food. It might be a thing about music, or it might be whatever it was that we had on top of the food is often where we'll relate or chat now. And it's just, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's so funny. I think I may have told you this. We don't need to get into it. You and I found ourselves seated together at a holiday thing, which was very special.
Yes.
I think I may have told you there. My first taste of your food happened when Alfred Portale brought me to 71 Clinton. And this is how, I always say this, when you look backwards, things can seem very quaint. You had a dish there, it was the avocado.
Yep.
It was shrimp, right?
A salmon.
Salmon inside, right?
Yeah.
And just the way that was presented, Alfred was like, wait till you see this, and then he was like, this is really cool, which it was. But when you look but when you look at some of the stuff that you went on to do in the next several years, right? That was I don't even know how to say it. It involved less science. What do we say?
Well, sure, but I would like to think that we had contributions above and beyond,
of course,
or whatever scientific or science adjacent contributions we made. But I think that there became a visual that identified a dish as perhaps being a WD-50 dish, and certainly that was an early part of it. And we brought that dish back. It was on the opening menu at Alder too, which was sort of a fun. You look backwards in an effort to go forwards.
Sure.
And, Alfred certainly was early on an influence on presentation, because
that makes total sense.
There's certainly some DNA in that dish. He had his seafood salad. I don't know if I'm sure you remember that salad that tortured me, but it started with a half an avocado that you sliced and you left it together and you fanned it, and then you wrapped it around this seafood, and then you had to sort of make a hole. Then you had to murderously assemble these lettuces that you then twisted, and that was sort of my undoing, was that dish. But there's probably some subconscious early, the avocado being fanned there, and then marching that idea down the road and sort of wrapping it around it. We chose salmon. There was seafood. So there's I think that's all we could hope to do is take our previous experiences, build on them, march them down the road, make them our own, add to the dialogue, to the canon.
So let's talk about pizza.
Sure, love to.
Now, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about. We all kind of watched it. Those of us who spend time on social media during COVID, you're experimenting, and you were sharing all of this. What first drew you into? I mean, the whole world was baking, right, during the pandemic, which I think is kind of something to be examined psychologically, because I think that's a really interesting phenomenon that happened in terms of what bread and what the process means to people. I have my own crazy theories about it, but you were doing pizza. What was the lure?
I think, well, for people, I think bread is, A, it's universal. B, a warm loaf of bread is incredibly comforting. I think it was a time when people wanted to be comforted. I think the process is comforting. So to me, it's not that hard to imagine how but I didn't find myself, I wasn't drawn to yeasted doughs because the rest of the world was doing it. I wasn't drawn to it because I needed reassurances. I was quarantined with 7 other family members, my wife, our 2 children, my wife's sister, and their family, which was 2 adults and 2 children, so 4 adults, 4 children, ages 5 to 50 at the time. And I was seemingly the most likely choice to cook for the 8 of us. I was the one who it made the most sense, perhaps, at least for a little while, to be the guy that prepared the food. And so I was literally in the basement early, within the first month of COVID. We have a second refrigerator and freezer in the basement. I was sort of gathering some ingredients and just looking around, and I had done some work for Breville previously that year, and in lieu of any sort of financial payment, I took a couple pieces of equipment from them because I'm a fan of a lot of what they do. And I took an espresso machine that immediately went into service, and still I have to this day. In fact, I have 2 of them now at this point. And I took a pizza oven, their pizzaiolo oven. And I literally just looked, and there it was on the shelf. And I thought still in the box, unused. And I thought to myself, that seems like a great thing to make. Ages 5 to 50, pizza is universally appealing. I'll make pizza, but I didn't really know how to make pizza. Now, sure, had I made pizza before? Yes. Did I know how to make pizza with any sort of deep understanding or medium understanding? Not really.
Or finesse?
No, nothing.
You didn't have like a fluency in that.
Not in the dough. I mean,
right.
Not in the dough. The toppings have never really been the part that I've had to understand. Like, that part makes sense to me, right? A pizza is basically like a plate. I know how to put food on a plate. So the top has always been the part that has been maybe more natural for me. So I did what everybody does. I went to the King Arthur website and I just Googled pizza dough, right? Isn't that what everyone does? And so I started making, they have lots of different pizza dough. So I started making a New York style pizza dough because I also wanted to be good at it. And so but I had nowhere to go and compare. Had the world been open and I decided to make pizza, I might have chose a different style. But because all I could do was use my own personal history, I said, I have to make New York style pizza, but I have to make it in miniature. So I began making pizza, and I think it's very safe to say that for me personally, pizza saved me. Like, it gave me something to focus my intellectual energies on. I was homeschooling my children, which I don't recommend for anybody. It's, I don't think we should do that for so many reasons.
You were homeschooling them in that you don't mean they were just physically home on Zoom? You mean you guys were?
No, I was the one, my wife was still working.
Right.
So I was the one that was sort of coordinating the Zooms and making sure things got done.
Got it. Okay.
No, I'm not like we didn't like homesteading.
Right.
We're not like.
You weren't off the grid.
No, I
was on the porch with a shotgun.
Well, no, I wasn't doing any of those things. No, I was just the one sort of managing that. And that wasn't, that's not something that I was great for everybody. But my wife, she kept her I had a donut shop. The donut shop closed, never to reopen. So I began to focus on pizza because I needed something I'm prone to the deep dive. And so once I started making pizza and realized I was doing it poorly, that was a problem for me. And so I needed to get better at it. So that's what I did.
When you say poorly, you mean poorly for you? Like, do you think anyone else was perceiving the poor, what you described as the poorness of it, or the that it was falling short, or do you think your standards were just so high that it was bugging you?
Well, I think that if your families can be very kind, and it's when someone makes you dinner, you don't turn around and go, you could have done better. But I knew immediately that I wasn't skilled in any part of it.
Right.
There's a dexterity that comes with making pizza. There's an understanding, it's dough, sauce, and cheese, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the sauce and the cheese, no problem. The dough was not something that I had any, I had a pretty robust culinary background, but none of it was around
Sure.
Fermented doughs of any kind. I had intentionally avoided bread making because it was intimidating to me, because it's so simple, it has to be hard, right? There's so few ingredients, it has to be complicated, it has to be hard, and it is. Making bread is very, very difficult, making it well. And, I probably made somewhere between, by my calculations, 600 and 700 pizzas during COVID. And, maybe the last 50 were worth talking about. But it was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. And it was what got me to Stretch. So.
Yeah. So before we talk about how and when that got decided, like how you said you can do a deep dive, you're capable of a deep dive. What was it like? Were you keeping a notebook? Did you have an Excel file going? How were you tracking your progress on the dough front?
I wish I kept an Excel file, but I don't know how to do that. So I've just got stacks of papers. I'm very old school. I like a notebook.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. It's a mathematical equation with mathematical variables. And so I was just trying to understand, the levers and how I could push and pull the levers. But really just trying to understand what the levers did, because it's only very recently that I've begun to feel like I've earned the right to push and pull them too much. Then it was just about really understanding the math and what the ingredients do, and trying to absorb as much knowledge as I could.
Do you, I'd love to know how you started coming to the notion of making this kind of your next project for the people, for the public. And I'd love to know this is kind of a golden age of pizza in the United States. It's kind of crazy how many people have gotten known for doing it. I'm wondering how crowded the field is, and how, gave you any pause, or if that was something that drew you to it even more strongly.
Well, I'll answer the first question, which is, how did I think it was going to maybe be the next thing? And that was, as sort of the fog of COVID lifted, it was time to think, what are you going to do with your life? At that point, I had been out of real restaurants of any sort of shape or size for almost 5.5 years. And that was enough time for me to realize I missed restaurants. I truly missed kind of every part of restaurants. I genuinely love being in, operating, working, cooking, sort of the whole process of restaurants I find very enjoyable. And so I realized the time away, absence had made the heart grow fonder. And I said, I want to get back in. At the time I thought, turns out now inaccurately, that sort of fine dining was maybe waning. It seemed like right before COVID, we were seeing less and less fine dining restaurants open and that sort of thing.
And also, you don't have to comment on this, but I've said it on the show, and I've done at least one special about it. That was also the media narrative, I think. I felt like we were seeing articles about, is fine dining dead? And so when the Noma thing got announced, that was a couple years after what we're talking, but a couple years ago, that was everyone was like, okay. And there was a whole another spate of, what does this signify? So I feel like that narrative was definitely being
Yeah,
pushed.
well,
But you don't have to
yesterday,
comment.
60
You don't have to
seconds
comment
of
on
ticket
that.
sales, they seem to be doing okay. So I was wrong about that, is what I think. I think fine dining is not dead.
Right.
That was a misread by me and perhaps food media, whomever, whatever. That's not the point. So I was excited to get back into restaurants, and I like I said, probably the last 50 made me feel like, okay, this is literally, we're now at a point where I could serve this, I could take your money for this and not feel like, it was an unfair trade.
Mhm.
And so I was excited to get back into the pizza restaurant business. And, pre-COVID, Gage Tollner and I of Bread's Bakery had been talking, sort of dancing around each other, trying to figure out a way to do something together. That we always sort of knew would be a pop-up. And so I presented him with the notion of, why don't we do a pizza pop-up? And he was like, well, you don't know how to make pizza, or you don't do pizza. I don't think he was like saying it meanly, but he's like, what do you mean pizza? Basically, he was sort of confused by that. I happened to live about 45 seconds from the original Breads. So I was able to go home. I made an everything bagel pizza. I brought it to him. I had actual pizza boxes left over from the donut shop, because we used to deliver our donuts in pizza boxes, because pizza boxes are sturdy and great. So I ran over to him with that, and he was like, oh, that's pretty good, pretty fun. I figured he would appreciate the bagel playfulness of it all. A couple days later, I said, so what do you say? And he's like, I don't know. So I brought him another pizza. And I think he started doing the math on that and saying, he's going to just keep bringing me pizzas. So let's give it a try. So we did a pop-up there that was, I think we all enjoyed it. It was successful, and people had a good time. We enjoyed each other's company. We were sort of an after-hours use case for him, so we weren't really in the way. And so then after it was about 5 months or so, we said, hey, why don't we see if we can take this a little bit further? And he was interested, I was interested, and we brought on some more people, and so Stretch was born.
Who came up with the name?
Stretch, I'm pretty sure that was my wife's idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about the other question about, there's so many people who've gotten so well known for pizza. A lot of that, obviously more people have come on the scene, but a lot of that was already the case when you were starting to do this. Just how did that factor in or not factor into your plans?
Well, when we found the space that the original Stretch, we now have 3 locations, but the original Stretch was in, it felt like, okay, this is a restaurant. And if you fill Central Park with all 2,000 plus pizzerias, the pond in Central Park, let's say, with, the 2,000 plus pizzerias that there are, okay, it's a pretty crowded field. Let's take out all the slice shops and just leave sort of the freestanding pizza restaurants. It becomes literally a handful. It doesn't, thousands are gone, and now there's room. And so I think we started to think, well, okay, we could be a place, you're talking about maybe places like Ops or, Dan Richer at Razza, which is not New York City, but adjacent.
Yeah.
And places,
subway right away.
Places like it's easier to get to than some of the, outer borough pizzerias. And it started to seem like, okay, these are people making a mark, doing interesting things. It would be an opportunity for us to flex our hospitality and flex our restaurant DNA in a way that a slice shop kind of limits you. You should still aspire to be hospitable and friendly, but counter service is different. And so I thought it would be a great way to do that, and a great way that there was the opportunity to stand out. And then I think that, one also believes that if you do it well, better than most, that at some point the cream will rise. And so that's to this day, we continue to try to make, as we say, better pizza tomorrow than we did yesterday, in the hopes of continually pushing and evolving and trying to give people, I don't like the idea of who's got the best pizza or the best slice, but I want to be in the conversation. I want someone to feel like, well, if they didn't make it to one of the Stretches to try the pizza, that their New York City pizza experience was somehow incomplete, and that we're part of the dialogue. We're part of the conversation.
I love that. I love that. The best burger, the best pizza thing, it's actually Alfred Portali, who we were talking about a minute ago. He said this thing to me, and it's always what comes to mind for me. And I don't even know that he was pointing to anyone specifically, but he was like, there's all these articles like, this is the best pizza, this is the best burger. It just means it's the writer's favorite. Like, there is no absolute about, maybe there's a more traditional, right? But in terms of the best, it's just a subjective thing.
No, there's not the best, but there are great versions,
Yes, of course.
and there are not so great versions.
Yes, of course.
There are great practitioners.
Yes.
There are people aspiring to make a great burger. You know what I mean? If you listen to Billy Durney wax poetic about the burger, it's not just poetry. It's actual deep understanding of a process.
Yes.
And the components. And and I think that the same can be said for sort of anything, but there are people that are making an effort to practice it at a high level. And so best, no, not at all.
Yeah.
We're the best on the block.
I would hope so.
We're the only one on the block, so I
Would
feel
hope
like
so.
I can say that.
You never know. There might be somebody with a Breville oven in one of the apartments.
Well, I'd be happy to go.
Nipping at your heels.
I'd be happy to go toe to toe with that person. Take
What
my
about,
chances.
Taking that same question about the people who've kind of gotten a lot of attention for pizza in the last several years, it does seem to me that it is a very friendly community. It seems to me like there's a lot of mutual, whatever you want to call it, cheerleading, boosting. When you opened your location in Domino Park in Brooklyn, you had some of your pizza friends, right? Also serving there, right? And I think that's kind of great. But just what about that community? Because it does seem to me it kind of fascinates me a little bit.
I have found the pizza community to be extremely kind, extremely generous, extremely enthusiastic to sort of get together and work together. But I also think I've always sort of seen that fraternally, at least in the professional kitchens that I came from too. Like, I certainly watched as I had the good fortune to watch as many great French chefs would continually gather and muster, and there was a camaraderie and a joy and a joie de vivre about being together and making a pot of risotto or cooking together communally. That I see in the pizza community too. Now, the sharing of information has been not as open maybe in that world in the old days as the pizza community, but it's great. I think that it's been I feel very grateful that as soon as I started posting my terrible pizzas during COVID, I had some of America's great pizza makers reach out to me and say, hey, I see what you're doing, try this or try that, or I can tell from what you're doing that you need to go this way or go that way. Unsolicited, which is great. You know what I mean? You don't see that sort of kindness extended in that way for no reason. They had nothing to gain from that.
And these I'm assuming, were not all people that you necessarily even had met or knew.
They were all people I didn't know.
Yeah.
They were all people maybe I knew of.
Sure.
As I became an
these weren't
immediate student.
These weren't your professional pals. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I had
Yeah.
no professional pals in pizza.
Yeah.
I do now, and I feel very grateful.
Yeah.
But then I didn't have any.
Yeah.
But for Joe Badia to reach out to me and say, hey, when the irony was he doesn't even know that like his book was one of the very first books I devoured, and a lot of those old recipes that you asked me about are jammed into that cookbook sitting. If you actually go to Stretch right now, I should probably take them out, but anybody could go and steal those old early recipes.
Yeah.
But that was just an indication of how generous the community is.
Yeah. We're going to take a break.
Great.
And we'll be right back. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs was filmed at the iconic Gage Tollner restaurant in beautiful downtown Brooklyn, situated for more than 125 years just across the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan and just steps from several major subway lines. Gage Tollner mingles a transporting landmark setting
with contemporary standards of food and hospitality. Gage Tollner's current chapter began in 2021 when the restaurant was reopened by a trio of successful Brooklyn restaurateurs following a lovingly performed restoration. In addition to the expansive chandelier downstairs dining room, the second floor is home to the Sunken Harbor Club, Gage Tollner's very own tropical cocktail bar, and to two conjoined private spaces decorated to resemble a Victorian townhome. We film in one of those. Whether for any occasion dining, a drink or bite at the walk-in-only bar, or a private event, Gage Tollner looks forward to hosting you. For more information and or to reserve your table today, visit the link in our episode description for today's show at andrewtalkstochefs.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay. Can we just talk restaurants in general for a couple minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, first of all, you made this comment, and I would just, again, this is just one of these things that once in a while I just love when I feel like I'm talking to the right person to get their take on it, because it is something that interests me. You made the comment, during the pandemic, you realized, you wanted to get back into like a full service restaurant situation, traditional full service restaurant situation. I have long felt that with very few exceptions, I usually say it in some version of, I don't know a more unhappy creature than a chef who's out of a restaurant. Like when the chef is between gigs, and I feel like that there's a rhythm to what, to your profession, that this goes back to how we were talking at the beginning about the mentor thing. There's a rhythm to the days. As you pointed out, it's not something that lends itself to doing it remotely. There's that physical being in that space with people. There's the joint effort that happens. It seems to me that, and I've known people who they don't know what to do. They're not used to being home for dinner. If they have a family, they're not used to that. Maybe they're used to it once a week, twice a week. When you decided that or recognized how much you missed that, how immediate was the urge to get back to it? Like once you realized you wanted it, was that something that you wanted to get to ASAP?
Yes, I did want to get back to it. I mean, I was, nervous. I hadn't done it, and by the time Stretch opened as a brick and mortar, it'd been 7 years since I'd, owned or operated a restaurant. That's a long time. You know what I mean? You want to make sure the muscle memory's there, that the things that, a lot had changed. Certainly, a lot had changed. A lot has changed.
In the restaurant industry?
I mean, from a technological standpoint, there's all of that. That had been happening sort of at a like when you buy a car and 2 years later, all the electronics are completely different. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That part, the sort of the infrastructure of all of that, and is something I'm still trying to catch up on and learn. But, I was very excited. Obviously, it involved, conversation with my family and making sure that it was okay, because, I had been around. I had been around for every dinner for years. And so I was going to, move away from that. And there's sacrifices that sometimes I feel bad about. But I did decide as I got back into it that I wouldn't give up, maybe leaving in the middle of the day to go to a sporting event or a recital or something like that to as my kids are older and older and older. But yeah, I mean, I like being in restaurants. I don't know how else to say it other than I do find that joy. I mean, it's probably a lot like, the off season for an athlete is, I don't want to say you feel lost because that's a little dramatic, but yes, the routine, we all like our routines. Everybody likes their routines. And so, creatures of habit need their habits. And so I think that it's been, for me, it's been great. I don't know how else to say it other than it's been great.
Is part of that for you? I mean, a word that it comes up a lot around this kind of a subject is around service, the service part, the live service is the word adrenaline comes up. People feel adrenalized. To me, it's like, I always think of it as like the day is like a roller coaster, right? And it's like you're building toward service, and then it's that, that rush. But do you feed off of that as well? Is that something that you would include in the kind of thing that you like about being in a restaurant, running a restaurant?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think I used a roller coaster analogy a little bit differently, but yes, I use sports as the analogy a lot. The morning is the practice or the prep. The evening is the service or the game. There's a hierarchy. There's a coach. There's a chef. There's a captain. There's maybe an executive chef or a sous chef. There are role players. There are, there's the brigade. There's all these people working towards a common goal. Sports are highly redemptive. You struck out, you missed a layup, you dropped the ball, oh, you overcooked that piece of fish, you forgot to put the ticket into the kitchen, you brought this to the wrong table. But you can't like that can't be the end of your night, because we're going to rinse and repeat this all night long. So let's get our head screwed on right, and let's not have that undo us. And so I liken that, but yeah, service is great. It's like the Cyclone, right? Why do you like the Cyclone?
Sure.
You like
it's a little rickety, but yes.
That's why you like it, right? Because there's these moments where you think the wheels might just
this
come
could go
off,
horribly wrong,
and this could be it for me. But they don't. But as you get that close to the edge, as you sort of ride the lightning, that's where you're most alive. That's where the greatest joy is. And I think you're right. I think that there is certainly a type of chef or cook that loves service and thrives in service. I find service to be a lot of fun.
You just gave a glass half full version of something. I find it's such an exquisite thing about your profession, which is, so the way most people I know put it as, okay, you just sent out a fish, to use the ingredient you picked, that was perfect, right? Now you got to do it again. Like, that doesn't buy you anything. You could mess up the next one, right? You have to keep proving yourself. That's how I'm used to hearing guys like in your line of work describe it. You described it as redemptive, that there's always the opportunity, like you said before, the next day I want the pizza to be a little better today than it was yesterday. This is kind of a similar notion, right? Like that things move in a positive direction. That seems to me to speak to I don't know. Do you consider yourself an optimist? These seem like optimistic ways of looking at things.
I mean, I hope so. I would like to be considered an optimist, because the alternative sounds terrible. I don't want to be a pessimist. But, that's the idea. I mean, we talk about this in the restaurants all the time. Like, let's make it one click better. Like, that one click will be completely imperceptible to everybody. But let's make it one click better, because eventually it'll be 10 clicks better, and then everyone will notice. But we have to try to make it one click better, even if nobody notices, because that's not the point. The point isn't to do this so people notice. The point is to do it to be better, to make it better. Certainly, at the very least, let's not make it one click worse. If we don't go anywhere today, that might be okay, but let's endeavor to just try and try and try to make it better. But like, you have to enjoy the process, right? Sisyphus is going to push that rock up the hill all day. And tomorrow morning when he wakes up, it's at the bottom of the hill, right? So you have to find joy in the doing, as Camus said, I believe. Otherwise, life gets pretty bleak, right? But if you can enjoy that process, then you found the right career. And I do not mind that process. In fact, I find tremendous joy in the process. And I liken myself more now, again, to use a sports analogy, more to being the coach that wants to try or ensure that we win the game, versus when I was, 25, I wanted to be the guy that took the last shot, right? That scored the winning goal. I wanted to have the full board, and I wanted to have, 25 orders of fish behind me, and I was just going to bang them out. I don't need to take the winning shot, but I want to be there because I feel like I can still help us win the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a constant, we use that term all along, like, hey guys, how are we doing? Are we winning? And the thing that always gets me is when people say, oh yeah, we always win, chef. We're always winning. It's like, no, I've done this long enough to know that we've lost plenty, So let's be realistic. I don't want to hear, like sometimes they think you want to hear, yeah, we're always winning. I don't want to hear we're always winning. I want to, I want to hear the truth. I want to know that you're okay, or that something terrible has happened that you're afraid to tell me, because I'm going to figure it out eventually. So why don't you just come cop to it, and then we can solve it and move forward.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, what you're describing, like, let's just be a little better, like I don't know if incrementalism is a word.
Yeah,
but
sure.
that approach to life, I find to be, there is actually a book somebody who writes business books, I forget who did it, but there's this idea, 1% better each day.
I mean,
right?
that's baby steps. We all heard the term baby steps,
right? But
it's everywhere.
It's also, to use a word that's like the least romantic word, it's practical. You can't probably make giant strides overnight. And it's harder to do if you're part of an organism, right? That's made up of many people. And there's all these analogies like, if you save a penny every day, eventually it will add up,
Yes.
And I just think that constant discipline, I guess, or that being kind of a template, a way of looking at whatever it is that you're doing, fitness, work, cooking.
Anything.
It's if you just keep at it each day and just go for that achievable thing, eventually it does become dramatic change or dramatic improvement. Or it has the potential to be that.
Yes, and for me, it's also, I'm learning. It's my opportunity for an endless continuing education. That is what I love about cooking, is that nobody will ever know everything. So for me, every day is an opportunity to learn new things. Every day, as we try to make those incremental improvements, they're predicated upon some sort of learning, right? They might happen by accident, but you should still then go back and try and understand what was at play. And so that's an opportunity to learn. And so for me, I'm excited that I get to do something that allows me to learn all the time and forever. Because that's cool, I think. To me, I think that's cool. Learning is cool. I'm excited by that. And so for me to go and, say in the last 3 years, I've learned in a tremendous amount about pizza, I say that with enthusiasm and excitement. And I say, I can't wait to learn more. I can't wait to see what we will do once we learn and understand how pizza works, behaves, lives, and where it can take us. Because that to me is what gets me into the kitchen every day. I mean, there is, yes, that service part too, and that's maybe a different bit. And not everybody loves service. There are certainly people that dread service. But I think if you can surround yourself with a bunch of people that love it, then, sort of sky's the limit anyways.
Yeah.
Because you can bring those two things together.
So can we talk about expansion?
You saying I'm fat?
No, I would never. No, I was talking about myself again. No. Let's talk about, you've had more than one place at a time. You
Correct.
have had that.
Correct.
But this is the same concept, not necessarily identical iterations in terms of what's on the menu and things like that.
Yep.
But I'll just put it out there generally. What has the experience of taking I don't know if you like the word or not, but a concept or a restaurant and projecting it out into more than one location? What is that learning, to go back to learning, what has that learning curve been like for you?
It's been it's still very steep, because it's not anything that my prior 30 years or 28 years, I mean, whenever I started, my hope was with the donut shop that we would have multiples, and that unfortunately didn't happen because of COVID. Although we pivoted into retail, so we had donuts in a lot of places in the four walls of New York City, which was pretty cool and fun and interesting. But I'm still trying to understand and get better at making sure that when you go to the Hue on 53rd and Lex and have a slice of pizza, that experience doesn't feel radically different from when you go to Domino Park and have a slice there, or when you go to Park Avenue and have a pizza there. That there's continuity, and that's what building the team is, and constantly working on all those things. And I'm lucky that one of my partners has a tremendous amount of experience in that. Well, and both of them actually. Gotti obviously has multiple bakeries, and Ezra, my other partner, has. They both have more experience in multi-unit operations than I do. And so, different people sort of have different lanes. I certainly try to make sure that culinarily there's continuity and uniformity and brand identity, and doing all that. And I think we'd love to see where this takes us. With pizza and where we could go, and it's a lot of fun. The delivery puzzle is another puzzle to solve and figure out how you do that. And there's this strange inherent relationship between pizza and delivery, but it has to pass through this box, which is sort of the worst place for pizza to ever go, is into a box. Yet everybody knows
because of the steam and
it's like there. I kind of understand how pizza went. Why pizza delivers is such a big delivery thing, but it's such a terrible place to put a pizza. One, we call it the coffin and all this stuff, and it's like it's not a great. It's not maybe not a great analogy, but it's not a great. It's just it's hard. It's because you want it to be great, but there's also this funny sort of social contract between, the pizzeria and the person at home, that the pizza will have, that there will be some degree of, I don't like to say degradation, but like going and having a slice and having it handed to you from the oven and put it in your mouth is different than, it going in a box and spending 20 minutes to get to you, and all this stuff, and how there's some ups and downs along the way, and how you're also giving this product to someone that doesn't work for you. You're putting it in the hands of a complete stranger, which is kind of crazy in some ways.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like in a restaurant, you give the food to a waiter, a server,
right?
Who
yes,
you've been hanging out with all this time.
Could have done a background check if you felt like it.
Sure, but at the very least, we had drinks last night and we talked today, and you've been here for years, and I see you every day, and I know a lot about you. But with delivery, you just hand food to a stranger and say, please make good decisions. But you don't actually have that conversation, but in my mind,
it's in your eyes.
That's, and it's interesting, and trying to learn all that and try to understand it, and how to mitigate all the possible pitfalls along the way, and all of that. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily as fun as trying to figure out how to make the best possible pizza dough, but it is important. It is stuff that we have to do.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for coming on. Thank you for trekking out in the snow. And I'm going to just say it on air. You don't have to respond, but you're one of my favorite people to interview. And you've always been really nice to me, like for well before as many people are as they are now. So thanks.
Well, very kind.
Thanks for doing it again today.
Always happy to come on. Happy to come for a slice, come for a bite.
Yes.
Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wylie.
And that is our show for today. Again, our great thanks to Wylie Dufresne for joining us. If you are in New York City or find yourself visiting, be sure to check out Stretch Pizza. The link to their website that features their locations is on the episode description for today's show. Please go check out Mise, the recipe operating system for culinary professionals, at getmise.com. restaurants.com/Andrew. And thanks to Gage Tollner for providing our location. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, please go check out Gage Tollner and its upstairs bar, the Sunken Harbor Club. Links to that on the episode description for today's show. And our thanks, as always, to S.Pellegrino for their longstanding support of the pod. Andrew Talks to Chefs is the property and a production of Table 12 Productions Incorporated. This episode was written, booked, and hosted by me, Andrew Friedman, produced by Alleyne, and shot, edited, and mixed by Victor Michael Thelian. If you'd like to support us, we ask that you do that by telling a friend about the show, posting about the show on social media, and or rating and or reviewing us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are now watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Our thanks, as always, to After School Special for our music. Please check out their album Double Barrel Single Entendre on iTunes. Please follow us on Instagram and also, as of this episode, on TikTok. @Chef Podcast is the handle on both platforms. Thank you for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs.